Hi, everybody. I have some thoughts I want to share this morning about America's decline. And when I say decline, it's not really a decline. It's more like a coming to the truth of where we are, coming to a more stable position, and kind of reaping the results of our unloving empire and unloving personal traits, unloving, habits, unloving cultural attitudes and biases, I suppose. So we are a superpower, and we believe we are superior to other people by and large. There is a lot of facade about who we are and what we do in the world. We like to believe that we're a force for good. Meanwhile, we rape all manner of countries of their resources. We do donate a lot, and we work a fair bit, but most of our day is engaged in addiction and unloving behavior, and even too much work, especially in the wrong direction, can be unloving. Workaholism, it's called. And we don't really appreciate how we are aiding the destruction of the world. I'm going to link a video to a man who is a professor who has a channel called Predictive History, and he talks about the so-called end of America. What it's going to look like after this is kind of anybody's guess, but America is a country full of people, and God deals with people. I heard AJ say the other day that, God doesn't deal with countries. God deals with people, individual people. So when you're looking for truth, when you're asking for help, and when you are requesting to feel some of God's love for you, God is interacting with you. It's a one-way interaction, or between you and God. It's a direct link, and there's no intermediary. There's no, I have to talk to your pastor first. I have to talk to Jesus first before I can talk to you, or vice versa. Or, you have to talk to Jesus first, or you have to get through me through your priest or your imam or someone else, or through a holy book, or you have to do some ritual before. No, you just ask God for help, and the sincerity with which you have a desire with God is going to make the difference in whether you get that help or not. Of course, God is always wanting to help you, and is always attempting to help you, no matter what. So there's that. But it makes a real difference when you have a sincere desire and you ask God for help. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about America in this video, but America is full of people like you and me, flawed people, very unloving people, especially people in my generation. I was born in 1985. I think we've been especially spoiled, and there's a lot of work that we have to do individually to unspoil ourselves. But also the baby boomers, my parents, they were pretty spoiled by their parents, and there was a lot of, there was not enough loving discipline, I would say, in the home. There was a let anything be, let anything go attitude, and we want to give our children, this is like a common refrain that a lot of parents will say, we want to give our children everything that we never had. And in so doing, a lot is allowed too much, in fact. Too much is tolerated, and there's not enough, rules based, thinking established. There's not enough. There are not enough rules established, and consequences for breaking those rules are not put into effect in a lot of American homes, and so what results is a great spoilage of a lot of people, and in some ways, our parents have harmed us. I guess I would have to say that is like absolutely the truth. However, we cannot rely or count on them to change their attitude. If they did decide to do that, we would probably be benefited by it. But we also might not be. We could also just say, oh, you're sorry about spoiling me, you're sorry about harming me in some other way. I don't care. I'll keep on living the way that I want to live. So like my mother could come to me and say, you know what? I did all your laundry for you. I did most of your cooking for you. I even finished your homework assignments. I'm really sorry for not giving you the chance to develop your own will and and have the opportunity to become a more loving person, because I took the place of responsibilities, because I took on responsibilities that I shouldn't have had, that you should have been developing. You are now a bit stunted in your growth, and I'm sorry. I could say to her, I don't care. I could say, shut up. A lot of people react angrily. A lot of people say, too little, too late. And so you as a child could, totally, even if your parents were to change, it could have like no effect on you, because you want to continue in the way that you're going. So the point is that your parents, whether or not they change, it doesn't really affect you that deeply. We as individuals ourselves have to make the change in ourselves. I've been praying a bit lately about, it's a little personal, but asking God to help me to go through the process of unspoiling myself. I am extremely spoiled. I see it all the time. I see myself like going to work, coming home, doing nothing, going to work, coming home, doing nothing, taking care of myself to the minimum degree, receiving gifts from others, not responding in kind with, not just monetarily, but I think God wants me to just, also be a gift giver. Be a gift giver of my time. Do things for the environment. Follow my passions. If I really am following my passions and they're loving passions, and I might not know how loving they are initially, but I can go through that process of correction where, I start following the path of my passions, and then I keep praying to God, and I allow God to give me hints and guidance as far as where I am unloving, and I can change as I go. But I don't really want to do that. I just want to go to work, come home, have the security of a stable paycheck, go to work, come home, do nothing, stay up, be on my phone, not go out, be antisocial just because people are scary, and I don't like people, and I'm angry at people, and I want more from people, and they're not giving me enough, etc., etc. So yeah, that's kind of my life, and I'm asking God to help me change that, because and it feels like this mammoth, gigantic thing. To be honest with you, to be completely, bluntly honest, I don't really believe I can change. If you ask me if I believed I could change, I would say no. By and large, no. I think there's a glimmer of hope. I've seen myself change in small ways in my life, but I don't see these changes as quite dramatic, and I don't see myself being in a noticeably different position than I was before. It seems like any changes I make in a positive direction are slow and they're far between, or whatever they say, so I don't really believe, but I compare that to the fact that God is an infinite God, and God is an all-loving God. God loves me deeply, carefully, with great consideration, and watches my whole life, and loves me deeply and holds me in her arms. So an all-loving, extremely powerful, supreme being like that, who's working to help you all the time, it would be foolish for me to say that I cannot change. It's only me ultimately that's standing in my way, and I'm not really giving myself enough credit when I say and actually believe that I cannot change. So, I compare my lack of belief in my own change to the fact that God is this amazing, powerful, loving force that actually is helping me all the time. So I got some emotion coming up, saying all that stuff. So there's that. But anyway, yeah, this is like, not everybody has been spoiled. A lot of people have been, harmed, and they work, and I don't think a lot of people. I think there's an illusion of work, and there's it's one of those good-looking addictions. My aunt is a lawyer, and she's a workaholic. She worked 60 hours consistently, week after week, and she made a lot of money, and she's a good citizen, and she's a great, member of her city, and she's involved in her city, and people look up to her, people respect her, and at the end of the day, I think she's still a workaholic. I think she still put a lot of her effort into unloving things. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I'm not gonna say that she's lived a worse life than me. That's debatable. I'm not saying that I have a great I can't get on a soapbox and morally pontificate on how much better my life is. I'm not saying that, but I think in general everybody is living a life of quiet desperation, doing unloving things, and not following loving loving courses, loving careers. And so it's not like she's special in that way, but I would say that a lot of the respect that she gets, a lot of the adulation she gets, it's misplaced. Because we tend to laud wealthy, successful people. We tend to laud people that work a lot, but it's not necessarily a good thing. So anyway, I think you could be harmed, and you can end up working very hard, but not necessarily be working in the right direction in a loving way, as I'm saying. And so but I think there are people that have not been spoiled, that have been sometimes by neglect, which is an unloving thing too, but by their parents neglecting them, they've learned to have to take care of themselves in order to survive. And that would be an example of someone that's not spoiled. So I'm not saying everyone has been spoiled, but in general, I think we are more spoiled than other countries as a Western country, as quote unquote superpower. I grew up basically when America was a superpower, the sole superpower. So that's quite interesting. I mean, historians will say maybe I think we're in decline right now, and I think we've been in decline for maybe 10 years or so. So ever since 2015, we've been in serious decline. And you could say we're powerfully ignorant of our own decline. But during the Cold War, I don't know when the Cold War started. Maybe it was ever since the end of World War II. But it's kind of sad to say because it's just, World War One, World War Two, Cold War. It's just war after war after war. It seems like. But I know that the Cold War ended in 1992, and what the Cold War was basically one superpower, America, vying against another superpower, the USSR, the Soviet. I forget what it is now. Anyway, Soviet Union, yeah. United Soviet States of Russia, maybe. Anyway, so America was a superpower and Russia was a superpower, and from the time of from the end of World War II until the end of the Cold War, which was I guess 1991, maybe 1992, there were two superpowers, America and Russia, and then the Soviet Union collapsed, and I think several of the states became their own states. None comes to mind right now, but and then America became the sole superpower, and with that power came a lot of benefits. You could say we hoarded that power. You could say we took advantage of our power, and but even before we were a quote unquote thriving country. Now, I say quote unquote because there's a lot of obvious problems with the thriving that we were engaged in. It wasn't really, honest and pure. It was more pure, and it became even less pure as the years went by. But the white picket fence, the American home, it's crazy to me that people don't kind of keep going on these tangents, but the homes that we have, they're so extravagant, so outrageous, so underutilized and used. I mean, people have 2 guest bedrooms sometimes, and people have more than one house. I can't imagine having more than one house. Why would you have more than one house? To me, that's just ridiculous. Personally, to me, that's absolutely ridiculous, and it's a morbid sin. I might be judging myself here. Actually, judgmental here. In a lot of videos, I say, "Oh, I don't think I'm judging," and I think a lot of times that when I've said that, I was judging. Looking back, at least there was a bit of judgment there, but enough to mention. Yeah, maybe I should talk about America's extravagance later. But basically, my point was, I grew up with America being the sole superpower, and whenever you want to say, we started seriously entering decline, I guess I would say, arbitrarily, at least that's not the right word, but I would say, in my opinion, is somewhere around 2015, maybe even earlier. But from 1992 to 2015, we had a world politically where you could say there was one superpower, and that was America. That was us. And so that's what, 8 plus 15 years, 23 years. That's quite a considerable period of time. That's the majority of my life. I grew up with America being the sole superpower. And we are still a superpower, but we're just in decline. So that's really interesting. And now we're more in a multipolar world. I think Marco Rubio, which is he's either the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense in America. He admitted that we're in a multipolar world. We're no longer, in other words, we're no longer the sole superpower. You could say that India, China, and Russia are some of the other major superpowers. So yeah, that's now the age that we are entering. But the point is that we are actually in major decline. We are not going to see the same benefits that we have seen for a lot of our lives, for most of us who are around my age. We're going to find it more difficult to put food together, get the resources we want to have, the things that we want, and we're not going to be able to have, these great big houses. A lot of people talk about how it's becoming a rent economy. I've never owned a house. I don't really believe that I can own a house. AJ says, you can own a house. People own houses. People get houses. You can get a house. And to me, if I can get a house, it better be about 100 square feet, 10 by 10, or 10 by 20, maybe 200 square feet, something like that, something small. For one thing, because I don't think I could manage something bigger than that. But for another thing is the costs are too exorbitant. I want a working house. I want a house that has a good roof, good walls, a good foundation, is slightly above ground so that I can minimize the risk of flooding. I'd like to have a driveway. I'd like to be somewhat close to town. I don't want to be out in the boonies. I want more land than house, you could say, as far as the ratio is concerned of the cost. I definitely like to have more land than house. But yeah, so if I could have a lot of land, a place that's close to town, and a working house, how much money is that going to cost? It's at least $100K. I have like $1,500 in my bank account right now. And my prospects are not very good. Anyway, that's a tangent about me. But yeah, like, our lives are very extravagant. So let me talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to start with a story, because I don't know how else to broach this subject. So here's the story. I make my own laundry detergent. I use borax, baking soda, and Zote, which is this laundry detergent bar. It's like a bar of soap. And it's easy to put the borax and the baking soda in the bin that I have for my detergent. I just use a measuring cup to do that. But the bar of soap I have to process. I apologize for all my interruptions with my coughing and my keeping my smoothie down. I just had a big smoothie. I'm also like doing the clearing my throat, I guess. But anyway, yeah, I have to process the Zote bar, the laundry detergent bar. And the way I do that is by using a cheese... Shoot, what is it called? I forget what it's called. I'm sorry. A cheese grater. A grater. I use a grater. Grater. And yeah, I grate this laundry bar into the bin that I have. And the thing is that I don't have a grater. And so I asked my neighbor if I could borrow her grater, because I don't want a grater. I don't want to go out and buy a grater, because I make laundry detergent probably once a year. And I don't need to use a grater beyond that. So I don't want a grater. And I don't really like compiling a whole bunch of resources. My place doesn't have a whole bunch of stuff. And so I thought I would do the quaint, quirky thing of borrowing an implement, a utensil from a neighbor. And I told her what I would use it for, and she said, well, if you're going to use my cheese grater to grate like a bar of soap, then I wouldn't want to use the grater after that. And that's understandable to some degree. Herein lies the point. Jeez, I gotta clear my throat so much. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, maybe this is what AJ and Mary deal with when they talk for long periods. They have to make sure they have a clear throat beforehand. I will say one thing, that I've noticed how sugar ingestion definitely results in more phlegm in the throat and more mucus in the whatever, your bronchial tubes, your lungs. So anyway, the point. What is the point? The point is that she said, so I told her, yeah, I understand that you don't want to use something that is, has some detergent in it, but it is detergent. It's not a toxic, it could be toxic in large amounts, but, you don't want to be swallowing detergent. I understand that. And so I told her I would clean it carefully so as to get all the detergent off. And she said, yes, well, that being the case, why don't I just give you one? And it so happens that she had an extra one because she has a lot of stuff. So she's actually, very different to me in the sense that she hoards a lot of stuff. I just thought that I just got interrupted by myself. I'm thinking it's possible that she might see this video, and I'm wondering what she will say. But anyway, yeah. So she resolved to give me her grater. I don't really want her grater. I'd rather just borrow a grater and then someone else, hold on to that grater. And then to me, the use of the grater, is like it serves its role as a product of something that is produced in an even greater way by virtue of more people using it. And even she said herself, she has 3 of them. She doesn't really need 3. And yeah. Now this might sound like a kind of a dumb story, but I think it speaks a lot. It speaks, volumes, you could say, about American attitudes. She has a lot. She has 3 graders, and she's a single woman. I'm not disrespecting that at all. I'm a single man, but she has 3 graders, and she needs maybe not more than one. If she doesn't use it that much, she could borrow from a friend, a neighbor, maybe, a grater or some other utensil. Like if there's a utensil that you use sparingly, maybe you don't need to have it. Maybe someone else can have it, and you can borrow it occasionally from that person. Now, in all of this, I don't want to come off as someone that is purely taking advantage of other people. I understand that, there ought to be some amount of give and take and reciprocity here. And in truth, she and I do little favors for each other regularly. So she'll give me a few extra apples that she has. I'll make some brownies and I'll give some to her. These kinds of things we do for each other. So it's not like I do nothing in return. So, and I wouldn't want to, preach the idea that you can get something from someone and you should just think about how, well, the product is being used better and now I don't have to do anything. Now, in dollars and cents, how much can I remunerate her? How much money can I give to her in thanks for the gift that she's giving me to let me use her grater for a time? I think it's definitely in the cents. It's not in the dollars. I mean, a grater itself is probably not more than $10. But anyway, that would be a strange thing to do, just give her a few cents. But it's something that I could conceivably do. But she might be more offended than anything. Which is another interesting thing, because like you would think that it would be a nice action, But even these days I feel like if someone gives another person anything less than $1, there's something to that too. It's almost like an insult somehow. If you give someone a tip that's less than $1, a lot of people will feel that you're better off not giving them anything at all. So that's an interesting point. So anyway, that's one point. But yeah, like, beyond the whole remuneration thing, like, the fact that you have more of one thing that you don't hardly need is interesting. Now there are some people that like storing things. They're kind of like retail retail establishments. They have more things, and people come over and utilize some of their things, and they have almost no problem with that. And there's not, that's not a bad thing. There's something beautiful and good about that. So, by itself, like, I think if you're constantly offering the use of the things that you have to other people, and it's all being done in a loving way, then maybe it's not so bad to store a lot. But it is kind of strange that, well, for one thing, there are a lot of people who are single. That's another cultural thing in America. See, there's a lot to this story. So, like, there's a lot of people that are single, living alone, such as myself, such as her, and we could be living with somebody else. And I see this definitely as a problem in my life, because AJ talks about how you ought to be living with someone of the sex that you are not attracted to. So if you're a same-sex person, you should live with someone of the opposite sex. And if you're heterosexual, then you should live with someone of the same sex as yourself. So there's no, like, attraction, there's no projection sexually, is kind of what I've concluded with that. So yeah. So that's the thing in itself. The fact that we're both single, but the fact that she has more than she ought to, and the fact that she is so put off by the idea that I would use this cheese grater and great detergent and clean up well after it, but there is just the idea, just the hint, just the glimmer of the truth that maybe there's just a smidge of detergent here on the edge of one of the grated bits, and that would put me off so much, so as to the point that I would not want to use this grater again. That to me is definitely a problem. And I didn't bring it to her attention because she didn't ask me. But all I said was, I would clean it carefully. That's it. But I think it is a problem with her, and those little things. Now like, in all fairness, if I were to mention something that I do that's unloving, hey, I go to the store and buy, like, junk food and come right back home. I drive away about 15 minutes in my car to the store using gas for the sole purpose of buying about $20 to $30 of junk food, and then I return home and I eat that junk food. I mean, that is unloving on, maybe 1,000 levels. I don't know. I could pull that apart. But I think the example I gave earlier is an example about, like, American, like, extravagance that's more innocent looking, and that's why I think it's more of an interesting example, because it looks very innocent, what's going on between myself and her. I mean, to me, it's like me going out and spending my time and gas on junk food is obviously unloving in so many ways. But what she did is not so obvious to a lot of people in America, I would say. And in the same way, having more than one house, having like 2 guest bedrooms, and not having a lot of guests over is also quite unloving. I have to reverse here. This guy actually unlovingly ran the red light. We're at a construction zone here. I don't know if you can see that, but he just totally ran that light. He doesn't give a crap. I don't know went through his mind, but unloving ideas went through his mind, and that's his prerogative. But I wonder if he's gonna get stopped. I see some cars moving. Anyway, I'm here at the stoplight. I'm doing what I'm not trying to pontificate. I don't think I am. Maybe I am. Maybe it's one of those things where later I'll say, I did pontificate. I did judge there. I don't know. I don't really feel that I am. But yeah, you know, I definitely do a lot of unloving things, and I think I've actually been quite honest about many of the unloving things that I do. But what's less obvious to a lot of Americans is, how we play the stock market, how we have more than we need in so many areas, in housing, in food, in luxury things, in clothes, in electricity use, in all manner of things. So, a lot of us take all of this for granted. We think that we are, just living the American dream and, loving ourselves and all of this. And we are, meanwhile, taking a lot of resources from the planet that we don't need. Car use is a huge thing. I'm unloving right now by having a car and using it in such a way, using it just for myself. Nobody else uses my car. Sometimes I take hitchhikers, but besides that, nobody else uses this great resource of my car. And my car is small, and it's old. I have a 2007 Toyota Yaris with 160,000 miles on it. But still, to me, it is this luxury item. The kings of the past, kings and queens, did not have a freaking automobile to go wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted. They had horses, they had people that took care of those horses. So they needed to have this power structure that, said I could, have people that whose sole function is to mind this resource for me primarily, feed the horse and all these other things, and take care of the horse, and then I can go off on my horse. But a horse is not a covered wagon. Some people have covered wagons, not a lot of people. But I have this car which is a covered wagon. I can go pretty much wherever I want. I think it's okay by and large. I do feel guilt because I'm a little bit more aware of this, of how it's a sin to just go wherever you want whenever. I shop almost every day. That's a huge sin. I should limit my shopping to at least once a week. I have this huge shopping addiction, mostly to do with food and stuff like that. But yeah, so I don't think I'm unlovingly pontificating from a state of moral righteousness here. I am extremely unloving in so many ways, and I'm aware of a lot of the ways in which I am unloving. But what I see is that my compatriots, my fellow American brothers and sisters, are even more unloving, and they think it's okay, and they think it's just because of American superiority or because we're more moral than other people. We know how to lovingly use our resources when we don't, and all those things. So yeah. I hope this wasn't too difficult to follow. I think I rambled a fair bit, but as you can tell, I'm pretty, uppity about this topic, and yeah, I think we're definitely in serious decline. I think it's a good thing in a lot of ways, but I'm also terrified in some other ways, and I just have to feel about that. But and in a lot of other ways, I feel a lot of guilt for my attitude and my behavior and my lifestyle. And in a lot of ways, I'm not doing very much about that. And so, another thing I would say I believe is that I don't think I'm going to make it in my current situation with my current, attitude. I don't really think I'm going to make it in a declining America. I don't know what's going to happen. I might be a little bit better suited than the average American to make it. Just the fact that I live in a town and it's not a city where there are a lot of angry people who would probably, kill each other in an era of less resources and no jobs and no systems in place to feed each other and care for each other properly, like make housing and whatnot. like I think we need to seriously consider. That's another point. Let me try to finish here. Like we need to, like our industries are finances and service. And service, the service industries have it's like a lot of hotels, with and hotels have a lot of fancy things, like let's not even mention, the bars of soap, you know, that's free. And a lot of people take, a bar of soap and then they throw it away, one single use. Paper towels, my God. I'm starting to clean my anus with water. I just threw that in there. That's going to be hard for some people to hear. But I'm starting to clean my anus with water, not with toilet paper. But using toilet paper, as AJ has spoken about, AJ and Mary have spoken about, is unloving. And they're taking steps to change that. Not only are they not using toilet paper anymore, but they're actually creating this loving way to create the loving process where you create like a wipe, a butt wipe, basically, so that after you clean your anus with water, you can kind of get all the you could what am I saying here? Just wipe or just sponge, all the any excess water that is on or around your anus, and then you're in good shape. So I wonder if this pilot car is for me. I have to follow a pilot car. He's backing up. Interesting. So anyway, like, yeah, that's another thing. But like we have this a service industry with hotels. We have a big medical industry. Like I would say our biggest industries are finance, medicine. I do have to follow him. Okay. Finance, medicine, and service. And the service industries, as I'm trying to allude to, is a lot of luxury things, luxury goods, yachts, hotels, expensive hotels, landscaping my home, etc., etc. A lot of those things we don't need to do, and we are doing, and we're taking up a lot of resources in the doing of it. So I think we need to kind of dismantle these industries, industries, let's just say, in favor of basic needs industries. So we're talking about food, clothing, housing, water, and that's not just for drinking, but also like plumbing. I think we could have. I question plumbing. Like I want to have a system where I poop in a bucket, and I use that poop in a worm farm, and then I spread the poop, the worm poop, the poop that has become worm food, and now is worm poop because they've digested through my poop and other things that are in the bucket, and now can be used for the ground and to help grow plants and food for myself and others. So like I'm even questioning how we use plumbing. I wonder what AJ has to say about that. I haven't heard him say much about plumbing specifically, but as far as water is concerned, we're talking about showering, cleaning our dishes, cleaning the food that we prepare to eat, and also drinking water. So there's a lot in just water itself. But then there's also energy use. In order to heat and cool our homes, I think energy should be used primarily for those two things, and less so for our cell phones and the many appliances we may have, etc., etc. So yeah, those basic needs that human beings have, I think we need to bolster those industries. And we need to begin dismantling the service industries where people are supported in their luxury houses and their second and third homes, and these big hotels are erected and cared for so that people can have a great vacation where they're spending a whole bunch of resources sitting on their ass and having a martini, for God's sakes. I mean, that's just, to me, it's pretty ridiculous if you ask me. So anyway, does that make sense? Basic needs industries, to me, it's like five things: housing, food, water, energy use, and clothing. And we need to, you know, yeah, like I'm saying, dismantle service industry, finance industry. Not all of it, but like a lot of it, and whatever the third industry that I had mentioned was of those basic needs industries. So those are my thoughts. You know, not everybody's going to die in a horrible fire. You know, it's not going to be this deluge of like flood as you know. A lot of people are dying in Texas and now New Mexico, where I live, a little further south. People are dying in a flood, or I don't know if they're dying, but there's some major flooding going on. I think upwards of 100 or so people died in Texas already. That's not a lot of people compared to the people that die in other countries because of war and famine and a lot of things that we Americans, if not more directly cause, we assist in the creation of these horrible, tragic things that are happening to people. You know, if we're not directly causing it, we're probably assisting in it because of the way the global supply chain works and all this. But like 100 people die in Texas. I don't want to minimize that, but at the same time, I think it would be good to appreciate the extreme devastation that is occurring across the world because of man-made actions. So yeah. Anyway, I'm almost here at work. I'm surprised I talked so long. I shouldn't be surprised after all this time. I mean, I sure can talk my butt off, but you know, maybe it comes through that I'm a little bit passionate about this. I'm going to try to link that video. If you're interested, you can watch it. Professor Jiang is his name, and he makes a very compelling case about what the future of America is probably going to, well, not so much what it's going to look like, but how we've gotten to this point, why we are here at this point. He talks about easy money and how we're all dependent on easy money. He makes a compelling case. So anyway, you can watch that video if you're interested, but good luck to you in your in the work that you do to try to unspoil yourself. You know, every little bit of action, of work that we do, that I do and you do to change our unloving attitudes and actions, especially from an emotional point of view, is going to have a great effect on ourselves and other people. So I don't know if I fully believe that. At least not so much for myself, because I kind of hate myself. Another thing that I need to work on. But yeah, like at least that's what I've heard from AJ. Like the more we unspoil ourselves, the more we take more loving actions, and that comes from a place of desiring more loving things. The better we're going to make the world. And we have to always remember that we have God as our loving parent that's always there to help us, and especially wants to help us when we have a sincere desire. We need to keep praying, keep asking for God's help, God's truth, God's guidance, and we will get help eventually, if not immediately. It's all to do with our sincerity. So definitely got to wrap up this video. I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching, and good luck to you. God bless, Godspeed.